Donut Bag is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Your data is your business. Protect it with ExpressVPN. For 3 extra months free with a 1-year package, go to the link listed in my Twitter profile. So when I asked you to come on last week, it was just going to be to talk about, hey, what do you think about Malkin and Letang coming back? Because that's probably the only thing that was going to happen. And then the weekend happened, and all kinds of stuff happened. Angie Carducci, hi.
Ron Hextall gets taken over by the spirit of Jim Rutherford for a weekend.
Yes, my goodness. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
So let's start with the Malkin and Letang thing. They bring back Malkin and Letang. What were your thoughts on that? Did you like that they came back?
Yeah, so as far as Letang, I felt like he had to absolutely be their first priority. I just feel like he is an irreplaceable player. I don't know who you were going to have substitute those minutes and that type of play that Chris Letang brings. And really just his age doesn't matter to me when you see how he conditions and the shape that he's in, the minutes he's able to log per night. I just look at his age as largely irrelevant, and the deal he was asking for, the length of years he was asking for, I found that to be perfectly reasonable for a player in Chris Letang's condition, and just really felt like, give the man what he's asking for. If you can get him back, if he wants to come back, because I really, really felt through much of the season like he might want to go to Montreal. But if he wanted to come back, I felt like he had to prioritize that. So I was thrilled to see them bring him back. And then they had Malkin to deal with. And, at that point, it just felt like, okay, maybe he's going to walk. But at the price they were able to get Letang at, I thought he was going to command a bigger number than that as far as his annual value and his cap hit. So it seemed like it freed up the money that maybe you could get Malkin back, and then the whole debacle started to happen, and I really started to wonder if that relationship could be salvaged. So was very happy to see it happen, and I think it would have been a rotten shame if that relationship between team and player had ended the way it was playing out there for a minute. I also think that there wasn't really a number 2 center option on the free agent market that was going to serve you better than Evgeny Malkin and come in at similar years and price. And for people that were clamoring for someone like Vincent Trocheck, look at the years that he got from the Rangers. And I just don't know that you wanted to do that. So I think it was a perfectly reasonable deal, and just was happy to see it play out like it did in the end.
Yeah, whether you agree with the idea of bringing Malkin or back or not, Hextall executed it perfectly. If you said at the end of the season, Rust, Letang, Malkin, and Ricard Raquel are all coming back, you would have said, "Oh, that's crazy." So
never imagined that. And he got those players all in at the dollars that made it work, and I never saw that coming. Like, we all thought this was going to be this incredibly seismic off season, which it seems like in some ways it's shaping up to be, but not in the ways we thought. So we really thought those players were largely going to be walking out of here, and here they bring them all back. So I was really surprised.
And I don't blame Malkin. They people are saying, "Oh, Malkin's too emotional, and he's getting emotions in the way." It's like, well, first of all, this is a huge decision, and second of all, I don't blame him for being thought of as, third or fourth priority, because it kind of, it kind of seemed that way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, at the end of the day, he kind of was. He had to wait around for those other signings and to see how those played out and what money they had left. So when you have reports that he was texting back to players, well, I don't know if they think I'm any good anymore. I completely believe that.
Yeah.
I think he was really doubting whether the team wanted him and what his value to the team was. And that had to really hurt. You can make fun of him being emotional all you want. And I know he's always been known as a very emotional player, which is to me, one of the things that makes him great. And also one of the things that makes him take bad penalties, but also makes him great. But he really, I don't blame him at all for being emotional about that, because think of the years of service he has with this organization. And really, I mean, he has left money on the table and made more team friendly deals than he might have with other teams over the years. He's played on one leg in the playoffs for this team, with the idea that story about Mario Lemieux telling him he'd be taken care of after playing on one leg in the playoffs really, really hit me. Like, imagine that. And then Fenway Sports Group comes in and buys the team, and all of a sudden, maybe you're not going to get taken care of after all. Like,
Right.
it was all
Right.
awful. It had to feel awful if you were Malkin. I absolutely think he had every reason to feel the way he did.
They also signed Raquel, which to me was a complete shock. I thought for sure he was gone.
Yeah.
6 years. Are you? Do you think that was a good idea? Do you think bringing him back was good?
That's a long deal. I think people are, cringing a little at that term. I think it's one of those things like, I remember Jim Rutherford once saying about some contract, I forget whose contract it was, but he said, if you want the player, sometimes you have to make that deal. You have to give them the years. You have to do what you have to do to get the player. And I think in this case, that's probably exactly right. If you decide that Carvajal is a player that fits on your team, you like what he showed you last year, you like how he fits with either of the top two lines. I know some people didn't like the way he seemed to mesh with Evgeny Malkin and prefer him on Sidney Crosby's line. And, I think he can play on either. But if you like him on Crosby's line better, then fine. Brian Rust has played great with Evgeny Malkin, so maybe you put him on that line instead. But I think he's a player that's shown he can be pretty versatile in the top six. Obviously, that's a player they just didn't want to see walk, and decided if they wanted him back, they had to give him the term. So I don't fault them for it. I think there's a reason they call free agency silly season. And I think the deals we saw get signed once free agency opened speak to that. So if he went to the open market, you were going to lose him if you didn't give him a deal that spoke to what he thought he could get by going there. So you want to prevent him from walking, do what you got to do.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Even with Rust, when he re-signed, it seems like all of those players, Malkin, Letang, Rust, and Raquel, could have made more if they went on the open markets, but they chose to stay here. So that says a lot.
It does. And I think that Rust in particular, I think really left some money on the table. I think he could have really made a lot more money. I think Letang could have made a lot more money too. I think a team like the Canadians would have been happy to throw like $8-9 million at Chris Letang
Oh,
for a year. And,
totally. Oh my
could you
goodness.
imagine, like, even just as a sort of, I know still have Carey Price, but imagine bringing in Chris Letang as a sort of face of the franchise, and um, putting him up there as, as far as your advertisements and the endorsements he could get. I that would be an absolute bonanza for a team like that. I think he left a fair amount of money on the table to stay with Pittsburgh, and I think that really speaks to how they feel about the organization, and honestly how they feel about their chance. People say things like, "Oh, well, congratulations, you got the core back. Enjoy watching them. Other teams will enjoy winning." And well, I don't think these guys feel like that, because I think these guys want to win, and I don't think they would re-sign if they didn't feel the team had a real chance.
Yeah, yeah. When you hear, oh, they're too old. Old teams never win championships. Like, well, that really rules are made to be broken.
Yeah,
But
I mean, these are some elite players that will be on that older side of, the age spectrum. And, who knows, maybe they find a way to balance it out with some younger players. There have been examples of them doing that in the past. I think their prospect system was stronger when they've done that in the past. So maybe you have to find those players from the outside. Maybe a couple of the players they just acquired will end up making runs for those spots and making those impacts. But maybe there has to be a little balance there in terms of the age dynamic. But I think there's a difference between how elite players age and how non-elite players age. You have some pretty elite players here.
It's going to be very interesting. There was that debate of, why are you bringing the same team back that lost 4 first round exits in a row? And the thinking the other way is, well, yeah, but we didn't have, our goaltender was hurt this past year. The year before that, the goaltender just had a meltdown, and then they're like, okay, those are those excuses, or are those legit? And it's like, I mean, they would have beat the Rangers if Jari was okay. So,
absolutely. Or even perhaps if Casey DeSmith was okay. I mean, really, you have a legitimate goaltender in there for most of the series who's not an AHL goaltender. I think when you look at the series and see that they lost by, a single goal in a game 7, I have a hard time not believing that if you're not playing your third string AHL goalie throughout most of the series, that you can't make up that difference. So
exactly.
Yeah, it's not really fair. It's not really fair to judge that, in my opinion.
Exactly. Then on Saturday, all heck breaks loose.
Yeah, right.
First, there was a trade of Marino to New Jersey for, now I can't find who it was.
That was Ty Smith.
Ty Smith and a draft pick, basically, which was basically, I mean, I don't know where Ty Smith, plays in this thing. He kind of seems like another version of Marino, but much, much cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very fair. And he's a former first round draft pick and really just came into the league pretty quickly. It was an all rookie team member. And I just think came in with a lot of promise his first year. And his second year seems like his development stalled out a little bit. And, on a team like New Jersey, that's a rebuilding team, maybe with a guy like that, there's a little more responsibility they were looking for him to have a little earlier. Whereas with the Penguins, you have a team that can afford to give him the time to develop properly. And I think they are willing to take a chance on that. And Ron Hextall said, we're taking a little bit of a risk on this guy, but we think it's worth it. And I think absolutely he's a player that could develop into a really strong defenseman for them. He's, I think 22 years old and just has a lot of time ahead of him to make that development. And Pittsburgh is very much known for, with Todd Reardon in particular, for being able to develop those defensive prospects. So I definitely like his chances of developing in the system, and also like the draft pick ad too, because I feel like you kind of added the 2023 draft pick, and you also kind of made up for some past draft picks that perhaps by acquiring a guy like Smith, you kind of make up for some of those past draft picks that you've left on the table the years that you've just been chasing, winning at the expense of not drafting. So I really like how they're maybe adding to the system a little bit.
With Marino, was it just a case of he had one good year and really cashed in on that, and then it just hasn't worked out since?
Yeah, it's a shame. I really was disappointed in the way that he did not proceed to develop with the Penguins. And one thing that you hear a lot about Sean Marino is that the organization would have liked to see him develop a little more of a nasty edge, and he really didn't. He just was kind of becoming known as, okay, he has good offensive upside. He's a player that handles the puck well, not really any edge to his game, gets pushed around a lot in front of the net. That's something the Penguins kept hearing about their defense in general, and that's something both of these moves this weekend were largely intended to address. So I think John Marino leaves, and when we get to talking about the other trade, I think you pretty directly have a direct Marino for Jeff Petrie replacement. Is what happens there, and immediately just bulks up that defense, and that's what they're looking to do. They've been talking about getting heavier and becoming a heavier team to play against. That's what they're trying to accomplish. Many times I think we have noticed John Marino being one of those sort of leaner guys who doesn't really throw his weight around and maybe gets pushed around a little bit. So I think that's what went wrong for him, and wasn't really contributing a lot of offense this past year either.
Exactly. You could put up with the getting pushed around thing if he contributes offensively, but he he didn't. So
One goal.
Yeah. That's just that.
I think it was 25 points, 24 points, but one goal. And you just need more from a player like that. So if he's going to be all about his offensive upside at the expense of the physicality, you need the offensive upside for sure.
Yep. Then the other trade, they trade Mike Matheson to Montreal for Ryan Poling and Jeff Petrie. Wow. Losing Matheson kind of hurts. I mean,
I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate losing him. Yeah. I mean, hopefully Petrie does well, but I think I just really didn't see the Matheson move coming. He had such a great year last year, and I really felt like was rounding into the better side of his game, as opposed to the side of his game the year before that, where everything felt like a little bit of an adventure. He just really was becoming more responsible, making better decisions with the puck. More often, you were seeing him make a positive impact on the game than those sort of gaffes that he was known for early in his Pittsburgh career, and just really liked how his game was developing. So if the Canadians got that player, if he's going to continue to be that player, I think he'll have a little harder of a time continuing to be that player in Montreal, because I think the Canadians are not as good of a team, and he might be hung out to dry a little more often. But if they get a player anywhere close to that, they are really getting a good acquisition.
And they get Jeff Petrie, who is a little bit older, but he's bigger and I guess tougher, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Is he's, I know they're looking for bigger and meaner and stuff like that, but is that him?
Yeah, I mean, that's his reputation. His reputation is definitely that he is going to be a little more of a force in front of the net. He's going to be a little tougher to play against, a little more of an edge to his game. And he is also a player who's been trusted in all situations. I've heard from Canadians fans who do not like him on the power play, and feel that the Penguins would be well advised not to use him there. They don't really like how he plays off the rush. So I'm not sure if that's in the Penguins' plans or not, but at least at even strength and on the penalty kill, hopefully will be a good acquisition for them. And again, to the point of getting heavier, I just think he's pretty much going to directly swap out with where Marino was in the lineup. I think he will probably pair with Marcus Pettersson if Pettersson remains here. With as many NHL caliber defensemen as they currently have on the roster, I don't know that we can consider that a foregone conclusion, but that's how I see that pairing shaking out. And just think it's sort of ticking the boxes of what the Penguins think they were looking for and where they think they were getting beat.
Yeah. They started off, before these trades having a lot of defensemen, and now they end up still having a lot of defensemen. So,
they have the same number of defensemen. They have nine. It's funny because Ron Hextall said when, okay, we have 9 NHL caliber defensemen. I think it's fair to say we've got to move some, like at least one, maybe two. And then after the trades, somebody says, you still have all these defensemen. Do you think somebody else is going to have to move? And he says, I wouldn't say that. So I'm not sure what changed. So I have no idea. And then no idea what's going on there, but I would think, when you are this close to the salary cap, they are currently salary cap compliant, which they were not. So that's a plus. But at this point, I just really feel they have other things they need to address. Particularly, I think their bottom six is currently in really poor shape. They do have a couple players from that bottom six they're set to lose in free agency unless something changes there. So I think they've gotten worse from that perspective, and they really need to figure out what they're going to do there. I saw this morning that I saw on Chris Mack's show, he mentioned that he asked Hextall what he's planning to do about the bottom six, and he brought up almost immediately, well, a player that we acquired, like Josh Archibald, and I thought, oh, he didn't say that. Like here I am thinking maybe Archibald could be like in the AHL this year, or or maybe he could just be a spare forward that just dresses on occasion when they have an injury. But if he's in your if he's penciled into your bottom six on an every night basis, I don't know that that's good enough. I just don't. I think you have, if he's penciled into your bottom six every night, I think you have significantly downgraded from last season. So at this point, they have needs to address, and one of those defensemen might need to go.
Well, as it stands right now, I think there could be a bottom six of Jeff Carter, Kapanen, and Drew O'Connor on the third line, and
I think that's fair.
Yeah, and Bluger, Brock McGinn, and maybe Ryan Poling on the fourth line.
Yeah, I think that probably at this point is about how I see it shaking out. And you have other options too. You could call up, Radim Zohorna is still out there, and you have other options you could call up. I really want to see Drew O'Connor make this team full time this year. I think that would be fantastic if he can stick, and he really showed a lot of potential last year. I liked every time he was up with the team what he showed, and I would like to see, as far as the defense, there's sort of a question mark, I think, on the last pair on the left side as far as who makes that spot. And it's not because they don't have enough, it's just kind of who's the one that gets the spot. And that could be Mark Friedman, who I think has been really reliable in that spot, or it could be P.O. Joseph, who this year really has to make a club because he is not waiver eligible anymore. So that could be where some of that youth comes in. But yeah, I think Ryan Poehling has a chance of making that fourth line. And he's another player who comes in with a high pedigree. He was another first round draft pick who came out sort of like gangbusters in his first year with his new team. Actually, his first game with his new team in Montreal, he had a hat trick. I want to say he had a hat trick and the overtime game winner, or maybe the hat trick included the overtime game winner, one of those in his first game. And it was like, okay, we've got a superstar. And then he just very quickly fizzled out, no more production. He gets sent to the AHL. He did well in the AHL, gets called back up. It just could never really make himself stick in the in their main lineup. So another player that I think could benefit from a new start somewhere else. And another example of Rod Hextall sort of building this organization with a prospect pool that it didn't really have. So if players like Poehling and Smith could pan out, that would be some nice additions from years that 2017 and 2018, where the Penguins weren't really very focused on the draft and were much more focused on win now and trade away pieces.
Yeah, they definitely need the depth. But the really frustrating thing is, you mentioned P.O. Joseph and Zohorna. It seems like Sullivan really does not want to play younger players. I don't know. Is it a case of they're not good enough or ready, or that he just doesn't want to play them? I mean, at some point, why don't you give them some experience in the NHL and let them figure it out?
Yeah, I think it's hard. He's in a tough spot because I agree with you, and I would love to see those players get the opportunity. I think they eventually they have to, but um, unfortunately, he is, much like the organization has been in this win now mode. The coach is obviously in that same mindset. So I think that's why sometimes instead of seeing a player like a P.O. Joseph end up in that third defensive pairing. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if it's Mark Friedman that ends up in that spot. Like, okay, we'll take the slightly more experienced guy that we feel is a little more reliable. Maybe Joseph is the flashier prospect and maybe has a little more potential upside, but we're just a little more nervous about what he could potentially be on the downside. So we are going to give it to the guy that we feel is steadier. And I think that's really the trade-off you sometimes make when you're in that win now mode. So Sullivan, I think, is not immune to it. And I think that's why you see those lineup decisions sometimes. But it's not lost on me either that some years that they have had success, you've seen those infusions of talent from the call-ups. So, and Mike Sullivan, having been an AHL coach, knows that as well as anybody. So hopefully hopefully we see some of these players make their case coming right out of camp, and they make such strong cases it's really hard to turn them down.
Yeah, I guess they're just gonna have to show it in camp, and they're just gonna show they had just had that rookie camp or something
Yeah,
recently, and apparently nobody really showed much. So yeah, I guess show it when you have a chance, even if it's in training camp or practice or whatever. um
yep,
Someone we didn't mention is Jan Ruta, who they got in
yeah.
free agency from Tampa. I don't know much about him, but he was from it sounded like he played alongside Hedman, so he can't be that bad.
Yeah, he did. And I think when you're trusted alongside a player like that, that says a lot for you. And again, another bigger body. I think he's 6'3" and over 200 pounds. So once again, we get a player who's noted for being that heavier, harder to play against defenseman. He's definitely a player who will get himself in front of the net and move people out. So move pucks out. So Penguins haven't had that type of player in a while. And I think they really doubled down on that over the course of between free agency and going into these trades this past weekend. It seems like a very clear refrain that they identified of what they thought was missing. And he's a two-time Stanley Cup winner with Tampa. He brings that experience and leadership too. And I just think the league often, to me, goes through these cycles of we're in a speed skill dynamic at this time, or we're in a sort of heavier NHL at this time. What's finding success? And it's clear to me the Penguins have decided, okay, we need to play in a slightly heavier NHL. We need to play a slightly heavier game to find success. So when I look at Ruda and I look at Jeff Petrie, these to me are the types of players that the Penguins felt they were missing, and kind of similar refrain of what they're going to be able to do for the team if they work out.
It's funnier that we I think they've said from day one when Hextall and Burke came on that we need to get bigger and we need to get tougher, and everyone assumed, okay, that's going to be the forwards, right? You're going to get bigger, tougher, nastier forwards, and that's not the case at all. But it's been all like on the defensive changes made, which is okay. That works too.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously what they identified as a potential problem spot. I think when they saw players getting cleared out from in front of the net, that was something that bothered them. But they felt there wasn't, I feel like I saw that a lot in the past couple of playoffs, that there just wasn't a lot of resistance in front of the net. So I think they clearly identified that. They identified that as a problem that could be addressed with the defense. And see how that works out for them. But I think really to me, the key and what I like about the acquisitions, I might not love seeing a guy like Mike Matheson go, but if these are the acquisitions they've targeted to make, I think what's positive about it is that they are players who can really play. So you're not getting, you haven't decided you're going to be a bigger, heavier team, and you've targeted Ryan Reeves, and no
Yeah,
offense to Ryan Reeves, who can in fact play a little, but not that type of player. That's not what I'd be looking for. So I think they have very clearly um, made a mandate to get tougher to play against, but not tougher in terms of we need someone who's going to drop the gloves when somebody bothers one of our stars. Like I don't see the value in that. I just have never seen the value in that. Like most of the time when you get that person to drop the gloves because somebody's gone after one of your stars, either they're not on the ice when that happens, or if you're going to send them out on the ice to send a message next shift, like it just turns into a circus sideshow that I don't think benefits anybody. Like I don't want to see that. I just want to see you be the type of team that it isn't easy to be pushed around on the ice. So if that's what they're going for, I think that's great.
exactly. And as we saw when the Penguins played the Rangers, the league isn't going to do anything when one of the opposition takes out one of our players. The league isn't going to do anything, so you better have somebody that's going to respond.
Yeah, I mean, the league has made it pretty clear, especially in the playoffs, that they're just going to let things go, which is, super unfortunate, especially when they are borderline things that could lead to really significant injury, like anything that classifies as a headshot. In my mind, that's when I kind of start to lose my mind. Like
Yeah,
I just can't. I just can't accept it. I can't accept that the league allows that to go on. I don't think the solution to it is that you go back and headshot another guy, like a lot of fans call for that. That's the first response is, okay, well now we need to go do that to their star player. No, you don't. Like that's not. Let's just not do that. Let's get this out of the game. Like let's just get this out of the game. And I I have to tell you, I just don't have a lot of hope for that. I don't know what this, well, I know exactly what the solution is. The solution is crack down on it and give real penalties that take the incentive out of doing that. Like the Rangers not only got away with it during their series, but one could argue may have gotten a really big competitive advantage during their series from
yeah,
that. So you just shake your head at it being allowed to go on, and then you hear some of the responses Gary Bettman gives to not just not just regarding concussions and head issues and headshots, but just the state of anything going on in the game. And it consistently feels like you have a commissioner that has his head in the sand, doesn't want to talk about anything potentially negative. It could be a black mark on the league, and let's just carry on. Everything's fine here. So if that's going to be your approach, I don't know what hope there is.
yeah. It's unfortunate. I mean, in the NFL, they tried to get rid of headshots and they made it a severe penalty when you did have a shot to the head. So it could easily be legislated, and the players would listen if they say, "Oh my goodness, if I do this, I'm going to have a severe penalty, like a very long suspension or something like that." So it could happen, but they choose not to.
In theory, it could happen, but not under the current NHL leadership, I don't think. So yeah, it's a real
Um,
shame. And it detracts, it detracts from the game, and it also loses. Like I can't tell you the number of people I know who various issues surrounding the game and various ways they deal with things like this, and some of the, just some of the really ugly stuff that's happened in the league over the last few years, like the stuff that came out in Chicago. And it's just this kind of stuff loses fans for you. Like people walk away. There are people that are just like, I love the sport, but I can't watch this anymore. So I mean, you're doing yourself a complete disservice, and you're getting fans that would absolutely love to support your game walking away. It's a shame.
Yeah, I don't blame him for being disillusioned. Uh, one more thing. So
Mhm.
as it stands right now, it looks like it's still going to be Dumoulin along with Letang. Are we just crossing our fingers and hoping that he gets better, because he did not have a good season last season?
I guess that's what we are doing. I definitely look at that left side and think, okay, maybe it's Dumoulin who goes, maybe it's Pedersen who goes. Like, could in theory be either of those that you look at dealing. Um, but I know the Penguins probably feel some degree of loyalty to Dumoulin, and this is the last year of his deal they're heading into. So maybe they feel like they're just going to ride that out and see how it goes. He is obviously has been Letang's preferred defensive partner for a long time. I don't know if you want Letang to have a new defensive partner on this first year of his new deal, and just I just don't know that you want to upset the situation at this point. But it did concern me how he looked last year. He doesn't look like the same player. He looks like a player who has absolutely lost a step based on his injuries, and I have a lot of concerns there. So I don't know. There's part of me that wonders if there is a team that would be willing to go in on him in the last year of his deal, knowing they only have 1 year to commit to, and based on his name and his reputation, that they'd be willing to take a shot on him, and probably pay a fair amount for him in terms of what they'd be willing to send the Penguins way in return. So he's definitely a player I haven't given up on the possibility the Penguins might consider making a move there. But really, I mean, in a fairy tale story, you would love to see him make the bounce back with Pittsburgh after the years he's had here. I just don't know that I feel great about it after watching him last year.
He would fetch something in return just based on the fact that he's two-time Stanley Cup champion, Brian Dumoulin, which
And that
is
he's
weird.
known as absolutely true, and also because he's known as one of the best defensive defensemen out there. I think he still carries that reputation,
Yeah.
and I don't know that he is that player at this point, but if somebody out there feels that's what he is based on his reputation and wants to send a nice package the Penguins way, if I were Ron Hextall, I would be all ears on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's see if we're going to be entering the quiet period in hockey, or if Hextall is going to be possessed by Jim Rutherford again and start making deals.
Hopefully, if he makes some, it's to address that bottom six, because I still feel like there's a lot of concern there. I don't know.
I agree. I agree. All right. Hey, thanks so much.
Great talking to you.
All right. I'll see you.
Thank you.
Bye.